What's up, everyone? Good evening, 7:10 p.m. Eastern. I don't know why I always phrase it that way, but yeah, 7:10 p.m. Eastern. Hanging out here, happy Friday, back here with this beautiful moon. I know everybody's just trickling in. Wanted to say hi to Red Rum, Shaded, hey Shaded, Kimmy, how's it going? Great to see you. Happy New Year, belated. Z Proxy, what's going on? Yeah, we got a 32% waxing crescent here. Gorgeous earth shine right out the gate. Got Jupiter also nearby, which I'll try and get us a quick shot of Jupiter. Let me know if you can hear me and got that 4K clicked. Rainbows and butterflies, what's going on? Hope everybody's having a great day. Debbie Carson, what's happening? Good deal. Yeah, let's start off with high vibes here, going off this old album. Lost Arch coming up. Oh yeah, so that was what even is that song? Got distracted for a moment. All right, so hopping in here to say what's up to everybody. Let's see, start from the top. I saw Bumbleclat, Gato Fish, what's happening? How's it going? I see Easy E, what's happening? Genghis Khan, Urate, what's going on? Great to see you. Easy, who else? I think that's it, right? Let me know if I missed you. Always hard with the dark mode on to read the white text, so forgive me. What's up, NGC? Hello, Spaceling. All right, so we got this beautiful 32% waxing crescent in just a little bit of a cold front moving through. You can see it kind of messing with the focus, but still pretty killer zoomage tonight. High vibrations on a Friday night. Trying to find some tunes that I haven't played in a while. I always say this when I go back to the classics, but let me really try tonight and do something I haven't played before. Maybe Catch. No more Catch. Not for a while. I'm just looking for stuff. How's everyone's night going? Hope everybody's feeling good. Had a good Friday. Yeah, this moon's just absolutely incredible tonight. Got Mare Nectaris is the Mare that's kind of dipping into the black. You got Mare Crisium, nice hexagonal form, Tranquility, and then Fecunditatis at the bottom with Langrenus Crater. At the very top, starting to creep into Mare Frigoris and Mare Imbrium. The bottom left, you got Tycho coming into view with Clavius and Schickard crater. Some really cool features tonight. We'll do some more zooms. Cat, what's happening? Welcome. Code to Love. I don't even know if I have that on this playlist. I totally promised I was gonna put some tracks up, and I've not been good during the day to follow through with that. But soon. Let's do a couple from this record. I know people have requested this recently. Syncopated Television coming through. Remember to hit 4K if you're not looking at it at the highest res, so. Whoops. television. Coherent integration. Know what you don't, and knows just knowing. Alright, so we got this really cool configuration of Jupiter tonight. I'm trying to get us some labels right here so you can see exactly what's going on. I think it's Callisto up at the top, and then Europa, and then we got Io, and then Ganymede. So damn cool. This is the wide shot, so it's pretty small in terms of zoomage, but we can see most of it in one frame. And then up at the top right, you got this kind of secondary alignment of two stars. That's at the top is HIP 109998, and another star next to it that's unnamed. That's pretty sweet. Welcome to everybody just joining. Great to see you all. Justin, Flat Earth Head, What's Happening, Somebody Somewhere, Discog, Manos, and anybody else I missed, let me know. Keep going with some of these older jams. How about... Alright, these are a couple I'm pretty sure no one's heard. So let's just go for them. I mean, they're demos, and, you know, I don't mind sharing them with everyone. So. Once I came in, I rolled with fire, fill my whole life with significance, circle shell waves, filled with fires, remorse, hold my torch for the ones who want to live, call for the leaves and fly away, tell me just the same, kick down your photo to the looking glass rider, and it opened up my door, walking down that rabbit hole. Is it you I see there, high above the battle road, more than waits for the inside of me. Push your eyes down through the looking glass spiders and open up your hole, rocking down that rabbit hole. Is it you I see there, high above the battle road, more than waits for the goal.
Deserve
I always felt like I ended that song a little too abruptly. Kind of needs a slight longer fade out. But thanks for all the kind comments, everyone. Appreciate it. Appreciate your presence. I see Mary in the chat. What's happening? Surf the wave, exactly. Rockstar, what's going on? Hope I didn't miss saying what's up to everybody, to someone. Smash-o mash, what's happening? Stuff's all Sibian. Different vibrations, please. Alright, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about consciousness. Justin was saying, let's see, I might be calling for a classical, possibly high rant about space, love, life, and everything. I'm always happy to talk about that sort of thing, those sort of things. So where would I even start? Let's talk about space for a second. So space has so many facets to it, but I think let's start with our connection to space and how. I'm trying to think about what is a succinct point about space that would be really interesting and actually not just pompous rhetoric. And I would say maybe, what about how everything in the sky focuses at the same level? Go right to like this idea that somehow we look up at the sky and at a certain point the moon and the stars and the planets and nebula like Orion all actually focus at the same distance. Where that is, let's say it's 10 miles, 13 miles. So how does that work? And why does it focus at the same point, considering that like these objects are at different places in space away from us? So I think like, yeah, let's consider this idea that there are these shells of plasma around these objects, around every object in our solar system, every object within us, every point, every Planck unit, every quantum bit. This point has these shells of plasma around it. And so I think that there's a shell of plasma around each and every one of us that is the place where we interfere with the shells of plasma coming in from space, so to speak, that radiate or oscillate from space rather than travel through space. And so these points where the interference patterns exist, these points between the two wavefronts, and actually I think I got my sketch tool working tonight, so let's sketch this a little bit on top of the moon. I haven't talked about this in a while, so I'm just warming up. Give me a moment. Give me a momo. Smasho says, Ben Davidson just emailed me. Turns out space is fake. Who besides Moloch knew? Yeah. I don't know. Well, if it's fake, it's still pretty interesting. You know, baseline, the moon is pretty rad. And Jupiter, it's being able to see these planets all together. So what I was trying to say is, close this, put this up. Hooey. Okay, now we can do some damage here. So the way I'm imagining these plasma layers to work, and this is obviously not to scale, but let's draw an eyeball. And our eyes are sending out signals. They're oscillating. And so they're creating these layers of fractalized or cymatic points into the ether. The ether is pushing in on us, and our eyes are magnetizing the ether around us by sending out pulses, oscillations. The moon is also doing the same thing at a much larger scale. And what happens is at some point, boom, interference. These create this shape because of our intrinsic geometry, the hourglass and the hypotrochoid, along a Birkeland filament. So Birkeland filaments run 90, I want to say, at right angles to each other, and therefore you're kind of, but it's also difficult to imagine it because it's not two-dimensional, right? But I'm simplifying it to a point where I'm trying to explain what focal point is really, and I think that this point right here, where the information from the moon and the information from our oscillation from the eye meet, and it creates this point of sympathetic resonance. So this starts resonating as a memory in a way. This is how memories or ideas are created. And it's real world, it's not imaginary, it's actual, like, it's a form of water or plasma wrapping itself into a pinch. And this pinch has a particular frequency, and it stores the information of that one moment in time. So this is happening over and over and over constantly. That's how these layers are moving through, and so you're getting all these different points. And I think that this is how, so it's not just our eyes, right? Our eyes are looking into the ionosphere and the mesosphere and the layers around Earth. So we're seeing really a version of this that is getting the information of the moon's existence. We're sending our oscillation of existence, and we're meeting at a mutual mass acceleration point. And this is how we're drawn to this point, a countersink, and what essentially I think is a black hole. And so this is how gravity works, according to, I want to say Ken Wheeler, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but this is how I feel like it creates this kind of midway point between the two objects, and both accelerate towards each other. I know that's a lot of ideas in one, but this is how I interpret, interaction between particles, between humans, between the eye and the ionosphere, and space information is coming to a point, and these points are interference patterns that create other little nodes, and those nodes are what we interpret as focal points. Freaking magnets, man. Plasma is ionized material. Yeah, exactly. Can I get Venus? Venus is already has already set for the night. Same thing with Saturn and Venus are going pretty quick, and Jupiter is now already like kind of low. So it's not even 8 o'clock. So this is how I also imagine, like, our ears are sending out signals to capture resonant waves, and it creates the same kind of interaction. And I would say all emotion probably acts the same way. So there's this great image that I've shown before, but let's talk about it for a moment. Smells of sage and incense. All right, this funnels image. And this is a really great representation of how humans and all things pretty much are grown along a Birkeland filament. And then at the same time, every single one of the oscillators in the body sends out these kind of same right angle spiraling Birkeland filaments back and front. So when we're experiencing reality, our mind is sending out a signal, our throat is sending out a signal, our heart is sending out a signal in a spiraling Birkeland filament to the corresponding layers of ionized plasma. I'm not sure that the ears are passive necessarily, because it takes two to create, a balance between the two things. So even though, it might, the eardrum might vibrate at a certain type of resonance, it's constantly vibrating, therefore it's introducing new layers of ionized, informational plasma layers into the ether. So the ear is active in that way, I think. So yeah, this idea that every single one of the chakras essentially is oscillating, and in tandem they create the complexity of the human experience. Exposing filamental secrets, exactly. So I love this image, and you can see it's kind of trying to show these layers around it. And this is what I think, the furthest bubble away from us is akin to the skin of an apple. Where the skin of the apple used to start at the point of inception. Our birth memories and our existence is this very, very diffuse layer of plasma that's far away from the human body, like it's a real thing. And we resonate sympathetically with it to try and remember our birth. But because it's physically so far away and also so diffuse, that it's very difficult to remember very, very early memories. And then if you think about your teenage years or your 20s or 30s, it's way easier to remember them because they're less diffuse and much closer to the body. And so on and so forth. So the layers that are closest to us, our auric field, if you were to take those images, those Kryllian photography images, and you see around the body there are these tiny manifestations of bundles of lightning, like we see with red sprites around the Earth. And so I would imagine that we are actively not only creating each layer of time, our time-space bubble, but interacting with it to create the next one, additively. And when you reach a certain point of ripeness, this is your midlife, and then you start rotting, and your bubble pops ultimately. And it's this very, it might seem very cynical to some degree to reduce it to that, but I think it's kind of beautiful to have this arc, this journey of birth to ripeness to rot, and then on and on and on. And finally, I see Michael McDuffie in here. Happy New Year, friend. Long time. What a comfort to see you are still pointing out our gaze to the sky. Yep. Just trying to do my part when I can. I feel like the stream is acting weird. Let me know if you can... am I saying anything too weird? Yeah. So... what else? Justin says, unless your etheric body is jammed up with etheric implants from the invisiturds that are cruising around controlling everybody behind the scenes of 3D, it's going to be all of that. It's not just one thing, it's everything. It's everything. I'm just trying to read some comments here. So I feel like this is one of these amazing things. I'm not the one who came up with this. If you study anything by Rupert Sheldrake or Eileen McCusick or Dr. Jerry Tennant or Donald Scott from Thunderbolts Project, you'll see that it makes way more sense that things in this universe are grown along filamentary currents. All the stars are connected, all humans are connected along an electrical root system. And these root systems spiral, and they create these counter-rotating currents. It explains planetary growth and visuals. It explains hexagonal formations. It explains consciousness. It explains more, like what I was saying earlier, interaction with the universe. This idea of human separation from the universe, from the world around us, is part. I don't want to say it's negative, because we need everybody to have an opinion of something, right? At some point, somebody's going to have an opinion of, I'm separate from the world, everything is stupid but me, or everything is unimportant but me. But really, the physics shows that everything is important in equilibrium to one another. So there's extreme poverty, and there's extreme wealth, and there's everything in between that. And it's always moving. So I feel like we're moving we're doing the same sort of ebb and flow. Excuse me. Ebb and flow with our like oscillation into this universe. And so, and we're also being bombarded with, you know, all the different 5G and all the different network effects and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff. So there is that interference, and it's creating all these different patterns in our shells. But I think more fundamentally is that we are all this same shape. And that, I think, is where you can satisfy a type of questioning or a type of fear of the universe where we're fundamentally separate from it, and turn that into we are fundamentally grown along a root system that's connected to everything else in the universe. So we are actually important and part of the plant system. So I think it changes everything. I think it is more empowering to think about it this way and to think about consciousness in terms of shells around the body versus being inside the brain. It's one of those things that, like, neuroscience, I was watching these quanta videos about how, like, the breakthroughs in 2021 neuroscience and how, like, they never even consider or talk about the potential idea that information, memory, or consciousness for that matter, is in shells around human bodies, outside of the brain. That the brain extends into shells, resonates with these shells, and that's how we actually think and interact. And I mean, not just certain things, everything is via this connected bubble formation. And there's an intrinsic geometry to it and a magnetic field to it. Yeah. So, let's see. I prefer to ferment rather than rot. Well, I'm sure you'll be delicious at the end of this universe. That sounded gross, but it's funny. Let's see. They say our brain suppresses our perception related to our own heartbeat. They say our brain suppresses our perception related to our own heartbeat. But think about it. Your brain doesn't do anything without you doing it. And in a way, brain is actually short for... Let me hide this thing momentarily so we can enjoy the moon. Sorry, moon. Didn't mean to be rude. But brain is short for membrane. So this idea, I don't know if anyone follows string theory, but, you know, I did rail against string theory for a lot of years because I was like, oh man, they haven't found anything, and it's all like taking this money and trying to just make it come up with magic particles. But there is a theory within string theory by Edward Witten called M theory, and it's about membranes bumping into one another, creating these sparks where the membranes meet. And they showed it as a loaf of bread in slices, and they talked about it. And this is from The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene. It's one of the first kind of string theory things that came out back in like 98 and 99. And I was really into that. And there weren't many videos. I don't know if any of y'all remember, but it was that. It was What the Bleep Do We Know? And then it was all the truther stuff and JFK stuff. And that was the Esoterra on YouTube and on the web. What's up, Dagger Spells? Great to see you. Thanks for leaving me a nice comment, and Happy New Year. Right, so I was saying how, like, we have every control over our body, whether we like it or not. So there's an idea of saying, oh, my body does this, or things happen to me. But in a lot of ways, not only are we apertures of the greater whole, so we are each other, and we are the idea of God, but we also do everything. We grow bones, we grow eyeballs, we organize our our organs, we grow skin and nails and hair, and like this is all done without us even being able to articulate. And I say us, I mean each individual actually makes its own body. Every rabbit makes its own rabbit body and builds its own conscious bubble. And I think if you remove yourself, the self, the id, or the ego from this equation, it becomes a very speculative, theoretical discussion. But if you're talking about physics, and it's not because I don't like theoretical ideas, just more that if you're trying to relate to, like, what is consciousness and, like, how do we exist at all? then it makes a lot more sense that there are these layers around us, and we ping these layers, we tune into them, and then these layers pop and return to the soup and then create new bubbles and so forth. We see this every day in the kitchen, and there's no reason why this wouldn't be the way things are. Let's see. Justin says, it's my experience that the spiritual realm is also manipulating my body. For example, creating a cramp so I can't do this. So creating a cramp so I can't do this, and I have to do that, and then I'll meet this person. It is. The ether is pushing in on us at all times, right? The pressure of dark matter, antimatter, the id, the greater soup of the universe, is impinging upon us. But this is what I would say: the fact that we exist at all is due to this impinging upon the Birkeland filament and creating stars, people, insects, bacteria, and so forth. So without this impingement, would we even be conscious, right? So in a way, like, it's hard to say it's excused because of that, but it is rather literally explained in a balance equilibrium scenario where you're saying, well, I live because I die. The payment for life is death. The payment for death is life. You could argue it both ways. But that's what seems to be correct about the idea of karma, the idea of doing versus not doing. But further than that, if you imagine that we're already the Godhead, or the fractal aperture of the God, then we already have godlike powers, and therefore anything we really do is godlike, because we can grow other humans, we can grow ourselves, and growing ourselves is the power of what we perceive God, a power that we perceive God's having. Besides levitation and moving water or whatever, but imagine that, like, a God can give and take life, right? And so we can do that. So humans have the power of the gods, so to speak, and therefore we have the power to give ourselves life and to take our own lives away by existing. And it's a different way of looking at it, I think. I think it is it kind of comes from the Zen Hindu teachings, but also those teachings didn't really talk about the Brahman in terms of ionized plasma bubbles. So it's a little bit harder to kind of engage that level of metaphysics and merge it with physics. And it's, I think, the similar reason why we can't have something like M-brain theory in string theory come out to say like, this is actually a logical theory, let's pursue this, versus it's so mysterious, we'll never know, like, no one has a clue, we have to just keep testing forever. And so I would imagine that, like, there probably is a group of people on Earth that has this technology, because it's pretty obvious. If I can figure it out by just watching YouTube videos, then I bet that other people have figured it out. But yeah, that's one huge part of it. Another one is, let's say geology was formed to some degree by electrical arcing between planets, electrical arcing between comets and planets, versus purely 100% impact related. And the reason we would imagine that is because if we're looking at the moon right here, you'll see very neat pentagons, hexagons. You don't see very many actually circular craters or features on the moon at all. And you really don't see, yo, what's up, Roach Steve? What's happening? And you really don't see aberrant randomness, like explosive randomness around craters and mare. You do see neat hexagons that look like butterflies and look like symmetrical infinity symbols, and I can actually draw that for us. Oh, my eyeball is still here. Let me reset my eyeball. Tell me when to shut up, y'all. I'm happy to talk about this. I'm also happy to play tunes. you know, get me going, and I will talk about hexagons. So let's see why are hexagons important. Oh, come on, what's the deal with that? Oh, there it is, okay. Okay. Let me fix this. Sorry, y'all. One day this will all be a little bit easier to do. Very excited. The new camera is a few days away, so maybe by the full moon we'll be able to get this pretty insane shot. Mostly saved my hand from having an IR line of sight thing with this damn remote. Alright, so I want to show us just a little bit of craterage. Please work with me. Sometimes the scope drift is like, no, I just want to keep going. Just want to keep going here. Alright, so Mare Crisium. Look at these corners. What's going on with these corners? Right? Sea of Tranquility. What's going on with these corners? Mare Nectaris, Sea of Nectar. What's going on with this pentagon, and then a perfect kind of semi-hexagon cut right into the edge, not anywhere else, right on the rim. And then furthermore, Cleomedes right here, which sounds like a disease. All these are hexagonal, they're not circular. Right? So you have this kind of, first of all, this kind of cool S formation, this sinuous formation. Then you have this very obvious X that appears here. This to me looks like our traditional hypotrochoid hourglass, pinched plasma tube. This is how formations occur in nature, all formations, where eyeballs are created. That's how humans are grown along a filament. I get really sloppy here, but let me do this normally. I have this shape right here. So you see, we have this twisting Birkeland filament. This is what creates Coriolis effect. This is what creates the spiraling effect of liquid coming out of a faucet, or when you pee. If you see your pee, it spirals. It spirals because we're grown along a spiraling Birkeland filament. And it spirals and it creates counter-rotating currents around the human body, around planets. Donald Scott. Right? So yeah, we have a plasma filament going down, and as it's going down, it's creating stars, plasma Z-pinches at every chakra. These are what chakras are. They're not made up. They're not imaginary. They're oscillators of tightly vibrating plasma that are creating their own spiraling Birkeland filaments in a way into the ether. And then when we sleep, these spiraling, and actually the spiral is the Fibonacci spiral, so emanating, extending spirals. If you look at it from the top, right, this is where we get the golden spiral from. Furthermore, there are arguments in terms of the alchemical argument, or the periodic table being manifest from solely the hydrogen element. Isn't it hydrogen? Yeah, hydrogen manifest along this spiral, gains different layers of electrons, and creates all the different elements of the periodic table along the Birkeland spiral. It's from this other an artist's conception of space-time or something. I read about it somewhere where we're the center observer. He's trying to explain the point of reference argument in special relativity in terms of like how the observer sees everything in relation to the self. The problem with Einstein's observers is that he just did away with the ether, the medium by which we perceive these things. So the bubbles, the plasma. Einstein basically does not reference this stuff in the final works that are referred to. I know it's oversimplifying it, but that is the fundamental. All right, I'm gonna take a little break here, grab some food, grab a drink. But yeah, we got hexagons on the surface of the moon. No one talks about it. Definitely could be some sort of arcing lightning blast that moved across the surface and melted the surface. It could also be impact, but it should be talked about because there are definite geometries that appear on the surface of the moon that are just completely ignored. And they're explained from this one narrow perspective of impact craters and melted floors, and then a certain period of bombardment 2 to 3 billion years ago that is unprovable. You know, you can just say that it happened, but we don't really know the age of the moon. And just because the age of the rocks on the moon and the age of the rocks on Earth are from similar time periods is not enough to justify really anything. It's just to say that that geology might be interpreted in a way that is quite limited right now, and ultimately will be interpreted in a way that takes into account electricity and how electricity affects geology, and that might change our perception of how old things are or when things are from. Ellie, I see you in the chat. What's going on? Great to see you. Sorry, I'm just catching up here because I was staring at the screen. I'll come back and talk more about hexagons in a moment. Let me take a quick break here. I feel like I've been talking for a while. Alright, back here for a sec. Let's talk about Mare Crisium that I have pulled up. Great to see you, Copper Tropicals, OG. Hope you had a nice New Year's. What's up, Mr. Miner? How's it going? Welcome. And everyone else hanging out. Great to see you all. Okay, so let's look at the hexagonal nature of Mare Crisium. And granted, like, it doesn't have to be super complicated to kind of understand what question I'm trying to figure out, trying to ask here. But just simply that, like, when you look into lunar crater research, or, I mean, there are more now than there were 5 years ago, to be fair. But there's this common thread throughout all of it that all lunar formations are from impacts, are due to impact-related events. And impacts, you know, could come at the moon from any angle. It's interpreted and, you know, postulated that it happened a few billion years ago, so there's this kind of probability of error that can't even be gauged. And then you have really what stood out to me is that I've always heard this idea that lunar craters are so circular. They're so round, they're so circular. But then the first thing you notice when you're looking at a crescent moon is how hexagonal and how diamond-shaped and how pentagonal some of these features really seem. And then you start to realize, you're like, wait, all the features are actually hexagonal to some degree, you know? Even the Cleomedes at the very top, this really interesting elongated hexagon. Where's my pen tool? This always disappears when I need it. Hang on. Here we go. All right, so Mare Crisium, the Sea of Crises. All right, that was a terrible line. Just let's follow this line, this line, this line, this line. This is the corner you can tell where I'm not just making up corners. Let me try this one more time. Drift is a little bit finicky. All right, so I know I might be delaying the explanation here, but it's very simple. The idea is that things are born into this reality along a Birkeland filament. And along the Birkeland filament, it starts at a point. The point expands outward circularly or spherically into the ether. And as it oscillates, it's bigger and bigger and bigger. Each of these layers is like a life layer, a time layer that we were talking about earlier, about the resonation between the oscillator and the layer of ionized plasma. Gets out, gets out, gets out. Finally, it hits boundaries. It hits resistance. And this is where a sphere can meet another sphere and create a straight line. And as it goes around, it's the same sort of reason we have honeycomb, which I have right here. Why do bees create honeycomb like this very organized nested hexagon? All right? It's because they build outwards, and eventually the circles or spheres or ellipses meet the next ellipse over, and this resistance creates these straight lines, these corners. This is the same reason I would imagine that there's a hexagon on the north pole of planets, on the north and south poles of planets. There are different types of hexagons due to the fact that there's essentially an oscillator trying to expand into resistance. And then that's how you get corners. Nested hexagons, nested pentagons, side by side. So it makes you wonder as to like how many impacts or what sized impact would have to hit the moon right here to create Mare Crisium, and also to create Mare Crisium with such defined hexagonal geometry that looks like basalt flats, like molecules, where I think I have the molecule shot. Where are my molecules? Look at molecules. Molecules are denoted this way. Now, granted, do they show up like this under a microscope? I would bet they do, because you do have this side-by-side hexagon-pentagon formation, and down the middle you have this hypotrochoid, or the hourglass, or the pinched plasma tube. And nature folds into nested geometry because of resistance between boundary layers. Everything is spherical until it hits a boundary, and then it creates platonic geometry. And so, let me check the chat here, make sure I'm not ignoring everybody. All the OGs in the house, hell yeah. Yeah, bees, exactly. But then, let me zoom out here for a second. Just because I have this wide shot, and it's looking really nice. I don't want to change it right now, but it's hard to sketch everything. But let's just look at Mare Crisium from a distance. The hexagonal nature of it is very apparent at this point. But what's even more interesting is that the Sea of Tranquility right here does the same sort of thing. It's this kind of side-by-side formation. And then Sea of Serenity up here is that same kind of molecular formation that I was showing. Then you have another overlapping, this is Sea of Fecundity, Sea of Fertility. And you do have this kind of formation, but it's a little harder to see. I think it all kind of nests together because of this. Mare Nectaris, Sea of Nectar, Cleomedes right here, an extended elongated hexagon. And really things kind of have chains. It's almost as if you could show that an arc blast between the moon and another comet, Mars, Earth, something else, just, you know, a sustained, very high charged thunderbolt, so to speak, or, you know, celestial static charge moving across the surface, creating bubbles, creating blisters. And these blisters expand, 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 and they meet each other and they create boundary layers. And then they pop. And I would imagine they're not popping like maybe the size of Mare Crisium. I would imagine it kind of expanded, and kind of melted outwards till it met either magnetic resistance or physical resistance from oscillators next to it. Oscillators being, you know, whatever subsurface tectonics of the moon there are. So this stringed nature of nested hexagons, pentagons, is fundamentally like one of these questions that I've really never heard discussed on really any channel until I heard Thunderbolts Project, where they talk about impact versus electric. And then you listen to Andy Hall's work on Thunderbolts Project talking about how the Earth was actually very probably formed by giant electrical arcing moving across the surface. Features that we imagine may have taken billions of years could maybe have formed in thousands of years or hundreds of years or even less in a few hours. And lightning, not only do we have lightning on Earth and static electricity, but we also have pictures of sprites, and we have intense electrical charge lightning on Earth. And so it's not this imaginary force that we're somehow making up, like, okay, the reason this is not talked about is because there's this idea that space is electrically neutral. But this is just an impossible thing. It makes way more sense if space is electrically active and we are feeding from the energy and the electricity of space to power the planets, to power the body. Even the sun is being powered externally from its resonant plasma shells. So life exists in terms really visually. If you imagine the structure of an atom, a nucleus with all these different shells, that actually really does have a very great physical counterpart. One more idea here, or several more ideas here, but let's look at an apple, because the apple is so interesting. It explains almost everything. Almost explains everything. So let's look at an apple. And what do we have? So we have the side-by-side hexagons. We have the hypotrochoid or hourglass or pinched plasma tube. We have the stem of the apple even outlining the Birkeland filament. Right? Then we have the seeds, which carry information. These are the plasma pinch, the Z pinch, the stars, the oscillators, the brain, the heart. This is where the apple starts right here, and it starts growing outwards, outwards. And finally, the skin of the apple is the birth of the apple, right? It retains the information, and it finally becomes the densest layer. And then all the flesh is what makes the apple propagate, is what makes the apple appealing to be propagated. If an apple only had seeds, it really wouldn't have the ability to propagate as much as it has. But because the flesh makes the apple appealing, it actually takes the seeds with it, and the seeds carry information not just for another apple, but for the whole tree. And so how does it do that? Because it's connected still to the entire universe, and the entire universe has information about what an apple tree does and is, and how that actually connects, what genetic code is I think sympathetic resonance with that information. So the information of what an apple looks like and tastes like comes in through the Birkeland filament and grows into the apple. Just the same way like the human body has like the chakra system, the same thing. It creates these apples. So we're a series of apples essentially. And then what else? There are other ideas here. Another idea is the equilibrium or the stasis between the volume or the matter or the mass of the seeds and the density of the seeds in relation to the flesh. The flesh, is more diffuse and edible, and the seeds are inedible, but without the seeds you couldn't propagate another apple tree. So that's really important. If you just had flesh apples, right? So the necessity of the other, the necessity of dark matter to matter, the necessity of the self to other, the necessity of self to the rest of the universe. This relational quality is manifest in the geometry of our day-to-day. What else do we have? The top of the apple spirals, right? And the bottom of the apple spirals outwards, reaches out. And then on the moon, that's the shape of the apple right there. It's the shape of the lungs. It's the shape of the eyes. Human eyes are grown along this dielectric inertial plane of impingement. At the center, you have this pinch. That's the pinch. You have a dielectric inertial plane. You have the fundamental geometry, the toroid, the hourglass, the hypotrochoid. Same thing right here. Then you have a Birkeland filament, spiraling Birkeland filament tracing itself through this. Butterflies, honeycomb, molecules, apples, human hips, the bridge of the eye, on and on and on. Fundamental shapes are recursive because they're there, not because they're imaginary or coincidental. But why that occurs is because the apple grows outwards, it oscillates outwards, and the universe, or the ether, impinges upon the apple. So the apple is oscillating, and the shape of the apple is determined by these interference wave patterns of the universe impinging upon the oscillation of the apple. And that's when it hits a ripening point where there's a perfect balance between dark matter and matter. And every object has a certain resonant frequency and a certain resonant plasma, or an ionization level. Many other things probably, but to some degree that's how I think it works, like the speed of the resonance and the frequency, the frequency of the resonance of the oscillation and its interaction with other fields and the ether is what creates all life in its different formations. However, it's still fundamentally the same shape, and this is how we can get tight, like organized, arranged geometry, sharp-cornered diamonds, hexagons, pentagons, in reality due to the fact that things expand circularly, and then they meet in the middle, and they create a boundary layer. It's a very simple explanation, but it's never really talked about. So that's a couple of ideas. Let me hop in the chat here and see what's going on. Excuse me. I'm a cat, not an apple. I love that. Looks like it got zapped. Yeah, let me know what you think of all that. I know I've talked about it many times, but like, for me, it's so obvious that there's something going on the surface of the moon that doesn't make entire sense if it's purely impact related. It could be that Mare Crisium was created by a giant impactor that exploded out into a bubble and then became this hexagonal formation. But similarly, a very high impact arc blast between the moon and Mars, or the moon and a comet, maybe Venus, or maybe when the Earth captured the moon, certain parts of the Earth and the moon exchanged thunderbolts, giant electrical circuits, in glow mode, in arc mode, blasting. Maybe this is why the moon's surface looks similar to the Earth's surface to some degree. Maybe that's pure speculation, but to some degree, maybe as the Earth was capturing the moon, the plasma arc bolts between the moon and Earth, or Mars, or Jupiter, or Venus, whatever it may be, created these blisters in chains. That's how we have chains of craters. That's how we have hexagonal craters. That's how we have nested hexagons. And that's how we have craters that have sharp edges, craters preferentially on the rims of larger craters. On and on. There's so many things about the surface of the moon. Brian Ford, Ralph Jurgens, Wal Thornhill, Thunderbolts. Many people have talked about this. I'm not the first. It's just like nobody seems to want to pursue this particular line of thinking. For me, it seems to be like the most obvious thing that like is being ignored. Because I did see a bunch of great moon stuff that came out recently over the last 2 years, where there are people who do sound like they know what they're talking about and do care about the moon, like I do, for example. But now, am I a scientist? No, I'm the person that I want to be and try and learn all these things by myself. But scientists who talk about the moon don't really ever reference this particular geometry. It's highly, I don't want to say suspicious, it's very intriguing, to say the least. The preferential craters on rims of larger craters and mare. Key point at the top, you can see that. Same thing with Sinus Iridum and Mare Imbrium, like these kind of half hexagons against a larger mare. Then the mare would be these flat-floored areas. Were these excavated by singular blasts? So like these giant meteors crashed into the center of Mare Crisium and created this huge explosion that ultimately created this very, very precise hexagon, you know. Not only is it a precise hexagon, but it's in perfect formation against Mare Tranquillitatis, which shows it in this fundamental geometry, torus against an hourglass, the shape of an apple, the shape of the hips, the shape of the eye bridge, the shape of the basalt flats, honeycomb, molecules. Nested hexagons are the strongest shape after spheres because they have to crunch together and they create boundary layers. Simple understanding, fundamental issue with like the idea of its only impacts. Then we're basically talking about the moon, saying no, the theory of impact is more important than observational exploration of the moon, right? So that's sort of what I'm getting at. Arcing between large bodies. Yeah, why? You know, the same reason your finger creates a tiny little lightning bolt between it and the doorknob, and you can even see it. That's, you know, the lightning bolt, so to speak, the Lichtenberg channel of lightning already exists, but it goes into glow mode for a hot second. Same thing with lightning bolts or like sprites. So these are always there, kind of moving around and kind of creating this network of Lichtenberg lightning plasma roots at different thicknesses and different densities. And then sometimes it'll go into glow mode, and that's how we see it. So I would imagine between planets, of course, why wouldn't there be? What if a younger universe had much more active electrical charge in space, and this is how things were carved versus they were hit randomly over and over and over again, and then somehow arranged themselves really neatly. I don't mean to be sarcastic, but you know what I'm saying. All right. Let me take a little break here. Little break. I love that it's Friday all of a sudden. Did not expect it. Love those surprise Fridays. On the edge of the shores, say yes to the night, blur like the city. Here, your love was the only simple way. Oh, deep down. All right, hopping back in here for the last leg. I'm starting to get, starting to want to chill for a second because I'm hunched over. And this has been a really fun show, really sharp stuff tonight. Feeling like kind of getting back into it. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I appreciate it. Nearly 9 o'clock on the East Coast, edge of space. Looking at Janssen crater. And you can see it's like really sharp hexagonal lines here. I'm not going to draw it, but look at it for a second and then I'll draw it. And it's just really amazing to just imagine how this might have been created, you know, because this idea that somehow something struck the moon and left this type of shape is just somehow doesn't click. There's so many little scars, so much kind of, and you could call this ejecta, but again, it could also be called arc sputtering. If you've ever seen electric discharge machining, where they carve into like steel plates with lasers, it looks a lot like the sputtering effect as well. So to me, this diamond shape of Janssen crater is just phenomenal, as well as like the nested hexagons and side-by-side hexagons of the mini craters within to the right of Janssen. What's happening, Rune Thorson? Welcome. I haven't actually tried to track the James Webb Telescope yet. I don't know why. Just like, every time I hop on, I just end up streaming and I get distracted with actual research. It's one of those tough things to do the research and to do the stream. Easy E, if you're getting out of here, good night. I'm staying on for a little bit longer, maybe like 10-15 minutes. Not just yet, but I'm going to start wrapping it up soon. Anyway, what do y'all think about this gorgeous shot right here of Janssen crater? Charlie Silverman makes a great point, says they even call money currency. Exactly, electrical current. The same thing with wind currents, right? I think the elitists at the top know full well that the electric nature of the universe, they just want it all to themselves. That is very possible. Very, very possible. Love these craters, says Kimmy. Wish we're all PPP on Edge OG a crater. Edge of the crater. Totally. On the edge of all these beautiful craters, we could sit and smoke a fatty. What else you got here? I put a little bit of tunes in the background. Just something light. OG crater is near the PPP crater, exactly. Mike McDuff says, seeing the waves in the live feed always makes me feel like we're really underwater, liquid universe. I mean, I think because I would agree, I think it does feel like that sometimes. It feels like we're looking at the moon through a fish tank in a way. But I've kind of more gotten to this electrical nature of it. Even when I look at water now, I imagine electrical filaments. So, I don't know, I used to think of the moon being underwater also because the moon has barnacles to some degree. I feel like a lot of it looks like the shore of an ancient ocean dried up and kind of turned into calcified bones, dragon bones, the shores of dragon bones. But now, thinking about Birkeland filaments and structures, I find it really fascinating to wonder like how these things expanded. You know, what, if anything, let's say impact theory is solely responsible for the surface, then how did something like this occur? You know, this is Mare Nectaris. Because we're zoomed in, I mean, it's a little bit harder, but you can see if you look at the bottom right corner, very easy to notice sharp 120-degree platonic corners. Ladies and gentlemen, the platonic corners. Where's my sketchy thing? Look at this corner right here. Right here. So apparent. And then this corner right here, look at that. It's, once you see it, you can't unsee it. right? So we have Mare Nectaris. I hope I've been right this whole time. Let me double check. Yes, Mare Nectaris. And then this crater, Fracastorius. I'll get 2 Fracastorius to go. This thing right here. Right here. This is a lot like Sinus Iridum or Bay of Rainbows when we see Mare Imbrium, you know, that kind of C shape. But what's interesting here is that it's on the rim of this much larger mare. It's so specific, you know, and it cuts it. So essentially what's happening is you're getting this kind of shape, this shape, this shape, and then you're getting another, like... Now, did these two things form at the same time? Did this overlap? Did this expand first and then Fracastorius appeared? Or did they kind of bubble outwards together, pushing against one another and creating this kind of against the Birkeland filament here, right? So side by side, like really lopsided arrangement here, but you got it. And then you have the Birkeland filament, torus, electric inertial plane, dielectric inertial plane. Let's look at a couple more features close up. So when I was watching some of the lunar discussions where this professor was talking about features, these types of features that, you know, are either called sinuous rills or they're called, the name is escaping me now, but it's like these folds in the land where, like, almost like plate tectonics to some degree, where there's slippage from regolith, not regolith, but like basalt, magma, like cold magma layers kind of loosening their grip and kind of folding on one another and creating this little edge. The other interpretation is sinuous rills. I'm not seeing this as clearly as I'd like right now. I feel like this is one of those slippages, but or I could be making that up, but there are also sinuous rills, which are like also explained in one way in the contemporary dialogue about, they're explained away as volcanic lava tubes. So alternatively, in electric universe theory, these are similarly arcing bolts from different objects, maybe smaller objects, like a comet, for example, moving across near the moon. Doesn't have to touch the moon, right? But it's creating this glow mode plasma arc discharge as it brushes, has a brush with the moon. So like a comet flyby, creating these kind of sinuous rails. There are a lot of them. They also all end up in a kind of Fracastorius Ellie, exactly. Brontosaurus, Fracastorius Rex. Let's see. If I try and track it, yeah, I'll definitely stream the James Webb Telescope, but like, it's going to be tough. I think once it gets into Lagrange orbit, then we can maybe track it. So yeah, the moon is just rife with hexagons, pentagons, nested hexagons, nested pentagons, side by side. And we live in a world where, you know, the contemporary understanding is such that it's purely impact related and purely volcanic related. So pressure, volcanoes, magma, lava, and impacts created everything on the moon. And there's really no discussing it without being kind of labeled kind of a bit crazy or a bit off or lumped in with different types of conspiracies. But this is not really a conspiracy. This is more like looking at the surface of the moon and believing your own eyes and seeing all these edges and corners and side-by-side hexagons and intrinsic fundamental geometry of nature that looks like everything else. And then you think, this is important. You know, if anything is important, this is important. And so let me end with love about just loving the moon for being what it is and not needing the moon to be more. And I feel like maybe we can love each other and ourselves in the same way by like not needing ourselves to be so much more that we can't do it, that we can't achieve it. Maybe we could be better, but we got to give ourselves a little break. And each other, especially, we have to give each other a break. And so, if we look at the moon and try to understand, you know, how Earth perceives this other planet, then we really have something that we can fall in love with again in terms of space. For, you know, for me, for so many years, let me just adjust this 1 second. For so many years, the moon was just a story that was told to me by a propaganda machine and a government agency. And now the moon is this other planet that we get to interact with directly via the tools given to us by the same people. Which is ironic, but it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the spill-off of the New World Order. So yeah, we get the high-level technology, we get YouTube, which is both terrible and wonderful. We get the understanding that we're in space, which is terrifying and wondrous. We get this understanding that we are fundamentally gods because we can grow our own bodies. There's no denying that. Ask yourself the question. Ask each other the question, who made you, right? What besides an ad hoc, you know, genetic code or nature, Mother Nature, you made you. The self made the self. Therefore, we have a huge hand in the future and the past. And one beautiful thing I heard once from a great man was, you know, the clouds make no mistake. The waves make no mistake. So why do we think humans make mistakes? We're all part of the system that is a beautiful fractal mess of things that allows for life, and such that everything is okay, even if it's terrible, and everything's okay, even if it's wonderful. So I'll end with that because I feel like it is time. I appreciate everybody's patience with me rambling tonight. I'm glad you asked me to ramble, to rant, and to rent. Yeah, this gorgeous moon just reveals so much for us and gives us a real connection to space in a way that like doesn't need a middle person to kind of convey that information, even though you could argue that I'm that middle person. But I think you can hear the passion that I have personally for the moon and space, and in a way it's almost like my duty to like share this with other people because it's just so astounding. So I don't need any alien bases on the moon, and I don't need like a holographic projector moon, and I don't need necessarily, you know, an corporate agency, privatized space industry moon. It's just enough that we have a direct connection visually and sensorially and amorously and electrically with this incredible thing, whatever it may be. And yeah. And we'll continue to do it as with as much gusto as I started with on the first day of this show. So I really appreciate it, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, Friday night. It's early, but I'm going to go chill for a bit and just sit on the porch and, you know, get off the computer screen for a second. Leave me a nice comment, share the video, check back on my old playlist. They're all organized now. If you want to hear some interesting stuff, I go back often and just listen to some weird shows where I'm reading people's comments, we're doing the chat room song. You know, it's crazy. It's been like almost 6 years now, more than 6 years. All right, everybody. Dreamboat to take us out, and I'm just going to let the moon drift, and I'll see y'all real soon, maybe tomorrow or the day after. Captain out. Bonne nuit, mes amis.